The laughter came from behind a door that should have been empty. I stopped in the hallway, toolbox in hand. Apartment 414 had been vacant for 3 weeks. My name's David Harper. I'm 45, maintenance lead at Northgate Towers for the past 12 years. I know every sound this building makes. That wasn't supposed to be one of them. The door was cracked, maybe an inch. Light spilled through the gap. I moved closer, boots silent on worn carpet. $2 million for one accident? A woman's voice. Familiar. Too familiar. My wife, Jessica. They'll never see it coming. A man's voice I didn't recognize. Smooth, confident. I pressed against the wall. My heart hammered like a loose pipe in winter. The insurance company won't even blink, Jessica said. David's been working late shifts. Stress, fatigue, accidents happen. The man chuckled. Leave that to me. I've done this before. What the hell were they talking about? I stayed frozen, listening. My mouth went dry as sandpaper. The policy kicks in 30 days after the premium increase, the man continued. $2 million, tax-free, clean and simple. Jessica laughed again, that same laugh I used to love. Now it sounded like broken glass. More David, he works so hard, always fixing things for everyone else. My hands started shaking. I gripped the toolbox tighter. They were planning something. Something involving me. Something involving $2 million. Something involving an accident. The voices moved deeper into the apartment. I couldn't make out the words anymore, just low murmurs and occasional laughter. I backed away from the door, slow, careful. My phone buzzed. Work order notification. I pulled it out, hands still trembling, and logged a maintenance ticket for apartment 414. Suspected water leak. Requires immediate inspection. There. Now I had a reason to be here. I walked to the elevator, pressed the basement button. The doors closed with a soft ding. What did I just hear? The basement was quiet. Just the hum of the boiler and the smell of machine oil. I sat on an overturned bucket next to the electrical panel. Jessica, my wife of 8 years, planning my death. Who was the man? How long had this been going on? $2 million? That was more than our life insurance policy. Way more. I pulled out my phone, started to dial 911, stopped. What would I tell them? My wife was in a vacant apartment, talking about accidents? They'd think I was paranoid, jealous, maybe losing it. Just words, no crime yet. I needed proof, real proof. The elevator dinged upstairs, footsteps in the lobby. I checked the security monitor. Jessica walked out the front entrance, purse over her shoulder. She moved like nothing had happened, like she hadn't just been planning my murder. I waited 10 minutes, then took the elevator back to the 4th floor. The door to 414 was locked now, no light underneath. I used my master key. The apartment was empty, clean, no sign anyone had been there. But I could still smell her perfume, that vanilla scent she'd worn since our wedding day. How long had she been planning this? I thought about the last few months. Jessica working late, taking calls in the other room, new clothes, new habits. The missing mail, financial statements that never made it to our kitchen counter. How long had I been walking around with a target on my back? I locked the apartment and walked home. Our apartment was 2 blocks south, same building where we'd started our life together. Jessica was in the kitchen making coffee. She smiled when I walked in. How was work, honey? Same smile, same voice, same woman who'd just been planning my death. Fine, I said, just some routine maintenance. She nodded and went back to her coffee. Normal, natural. Like she hadn't been in that apartment an hour ago. I went to the bedroom, sat on the edge of the bed, stared at the wall. What do you do when the person you trust most wants you dead? Leave? Run? Pack a bag and disappear? Call the cops? Tell them what? That I overheard a conversation that might have been? About anything? No, They'd want evidence. Real evidence. I could confront her, ask her straight out, but that would just put her on guard, make her more careful. The smart play was to wait, watch, listen, build a case. I'd spent 12 years maintaining this building, fixing problems, finding solutions. This was just another problem to solve. But this time, the problem was trying to solve me first. I pulled out a notepad, started writing down everything I remembered. Times, words, details. Jessica called from the kitchen. "Dinner's ready." "Coming," I said. I closed the notepad, slipped it into my toolbox. You work a machine long enough, you know when it's breaking down. You hear the wrong sounds, feel the wrong vibrations. My marriage had been making wrong sounds for months. I just hadn't been listening. Now I was. And I was going to find out exactly what Jessica and her friend were planning. Before they found out what I used to do for a living. Before I became maintenance lead at Northgate Towers, I had other skills. Skills that made me very good at finding things people didn't want found. Skills that made me very good at solving problems. The kind of problems that solved back. 3 days later, I started seeing the signs everywhere. Jessica had been different for months. I just hadn't connected the dots until now. The late-night phone calls she took in the bathroom, the new credit card statements that disappeared before I could see them, the way she'd started locking her purse in the bedroom closet. How blind had I been? I sat in my maintenance office, coffee getting cold, making lists. Times she'd been out, excuses she'd given, money that went missing from our joint account. 200 here, 500 there, always with explanations that sounded reasonable. Car repairs, dental work, her mother's birthday gift. Now I wondered if any of it was true. The building's morning routine went on around me. Tenants heading to work, delivery trucks in the loading dock, normal life. Meanwhile, my wife was planning my funeral. I needed to document everything, but carefully. No sloppy moves. Jessica worked in real estate. She understood contracts, legal language. If she suspected I was onto her, she'd cover her tracks fast. The old security system in this building had been down for 2 years. Budget cuts. But that didn't mean I couldn't install new equipment. I ordered a set of wireless cameras online, industrial grade, the kind used for monitoring HVAC systems in commercial buildings. They looked like air quality sensors. White plastic boxes with tiny LED lights. Perfect camouflage. When they arrived, I started with the lobby. Mounted one above the mailboxes, disguised as a carbon monoxide detector. Another went in the 4th-floor hallway, right across from apartment 414. I logged the installations as routine air quality monitoring upgrades, part of our ongoing infrastructure improvements. Nobody questioned maintenance work, especially boring stuff like air sensors. PROS fed to an app on my phone. High-definition video, audio recording, motion alerts. Now I could watch Jessica's movements without being obvious about it. But watching her at home was harder. She'd started noticing when I paid too much attention. Last night she'd caught me staring while she was on her phone. "Something wrong?" she'd asked. "Just tired," I'd said. She'd smiled, kissed my forehead. "You work too hard, David. You need to take better care of yourself." The irony made my stomach turn. I started sleeping in the break room at work. Told Jessica I was on emergency call rotation. Building emergencies happened at all hours. She didn't question it. Maybe she was relieved. The break room had a small couch and a coffee maker. Basic, but it worked. More importantly, it kept me away from her at night. I couldn't sleep anyway. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard her voice. "You'll never see it coming." What kind of accident were they planning? A fall down the stairs? Electrical shock? Something at work? My job put me around dangerous equipment every day. Boilers, high voltage panels, chemical storage. Plenty of ways for a tired maintenance worker to have an accident. I started being more careful, double-checking every connection, testing every tool. But I couldn't live like that forever. I needed help, legal help. There was a tenant lawyer in the building, Sandra Mills, 4th floor. She handled landlord disputes mostly, but she'd know about evidence collection. I couldn't approach her directly. Too risky. Jessica might find out. Instead, I called from a payphone downtown, told her I was a building maintenance worker with concerns about insurance fraud. Hypothetically, I said, if someone overheard conversations about staged accidents, what kind of evidence would hold up in court? Sandra's voice was professional. Careful. Hypothetically, audio recordings are tricky. You need consent from all parties in most states. What about other evidence? Financial records, pattern of behavior, documentation of planning activities, but you'd need to be very careful about how you obtained it. What do you mean? If you're gathering evidence through illegal means, it won't be admissible. You could also face criminal charges yourself. That stopped me cold. However, she continued, if you're in a position where you have legitimate access to areas or information, that's different. Like a maintenance worker? Exactly. You have keys. You have reasons to be in common areas. You're not breaking and entering. I thanked her and hung up. The cameras were legal. I had authority to install building security equipment. But I needed more than just surveillance footage. I started going through old work orders, looking for patterns. Times when Jessica had visited the building during work hours. She'd been here more often than I'd realized, always with excuses. Just dropping off lunch. Forgot to give you this bill. Wanted to see your office. I wondered if she'd been casing the place, learning my routines, finding the best opportunities. The financial records were harder to access. Our joint account showed her withdrawals, but not where the money went. I needed to see her personal accounts, her phone records, her real activities. But that would require crossing lines I wasn't ready to cross, yet. Instead, I focused on what I could document legally. I started keeping a detailed log, every interaction, every conversation, every suspicious behavior. Thursday, 3:15 p.m., Jessica called during my lunch break. Asked detailed questions about my work schedule for next week. Friday, 8:20 a.m. Found Jessica in the building lobby, talking to someone on her phone. She ended the call quickly when she saw me. Saturday, 11:45 p.m. Jessica received a text message that made her smile. She deleted it immediately. Small things, but they added up to a pattern. The man from apartment 414 was still a mystery. I'd reviewed the camera footage from that day, but he'd kept his head down in the hallway. Average height, dark jacket, nothing distinctive. Could be anyone. But Jessica was meeting him regularly now. The cameras showed her entering the building at odd hours. Always when I was supposed to be working. She thought she was being clever. The psychological pressure was getting to me. I'd lost 15 pounds in 2 weeks. My hands shook when I held tools. Other maintenance workers started noticing. You feeling okay, Dave? Asked Tommy, the day shift electrician. You look like hell. Just tired, I said. Been working too many doubles. But it was more than tired. It was the constant awareness that someone wanted me dead. Someone who slept next to me every night. Someone who kissed me goodbye every morning. How long does it take to plan a murder? Days? Weeks? Months? How much time did I have? I started varying my routines, taking different routes home, eating at different times, working irregular hours. If they were planning something specific, I wanted to throw off their timing. But I couldn't live like this forever. Sooner or later, I'd have to make a move. The question was, what kind of move? Confront Jessica directly? Present the evidence to police? Disappear and start over somewhere else? All those options felt like giving up, like letting them win. I'd spent my whole career fixing things that were broken, finding solutions to problems other people couldn't solve. This was just another problem, a problem that happened to be trying to kill me. But I had advantages they didn't know about. 20 years ago, before I became a maintenance worker, I'd had a different job, different skills. Skills that included surveillance, investigation, evidence gathering. Skills that included making problems disappear. I'd gotten out of that life for good reasons, wanted something normal, stable. But normal was over now. Time to remember what I used to be good at. Jessica thought she was hunting me. She had no idea she'd just become the prey. I pulled out my phone and checked the camera feeds. Empty hallways, quiet building. But somewhere in this maze of apartments and corridors, my wife was planning my death. What she didn't know was that I was planning something too. And I was better at this game than she could ever imagine. The hunt was about to begin. But first, I needed to know exactly who I was hunting. Rick Miller found me in the basement at 2 a.m., staring at old maintenance logs. "Can't sleep either?" he asked. Rick worked night security. 63 years old, ex-cop. He'd seen everything this building had to offer. "Just catching up on paperwork," I said. He poured coffee from the pot I kept running, sat down on the metal stool across from my desk. "You know, what you're going through reminds me of something that happened here before." I looked up. "What do you mean?" "About 4 years back, we had another suspicious death. Young girl, Ellie Harper." My blood turned to ice. "Ellie Harper, my stepdaughter." "You remember that case?" Rick continued. "Sweet kid, found dead in the stairwell. They said she fell." I remembered. Of course I remembered. Ellie was Jessica's daughter from her first marriage, 19 years old, studying graphic design at the community college. She'd been staying with us that summer, helping out around the building in exchange for free rent. "I was working that night," I said carefully. "Yeah, I remember. You were the one who found her." The worst night of my life. Coming back from a service call to find Ellie crumpled at the bottom of the stairs. Neck twisted, eyes open. Jessica had been devastated, couldn't stop crying at the funeral. Or so I'd thought. "Thing is," Rick said, "I never bought the accident story." "Why not?" It was careful, responsible, not the type to fall down stairs she'd walked 100 times. He sipped his coffee, stared at the concrete wall. Plus, there were some weird insurance questions afterward, investigators asking about policies, beneficiaries. My hands started shaking again. "What kind of questions?" Whether Ellie was covered under any work policies. Turned out she was listed as a temporary employee somewhere. Big payout. I felt sick. "You okay, Dave? You look pale." "Just tired," I said. But I wasn't tired. I was horrified. After Rick left for his rounds, I went to the filing cabinets, pulled the maintenance records from 4 years ago. There it was, the night Ellie died. I'd been called out to fix a broken boiler in the East Wing. Service call logged at 11:15 p.m. Returned at 1:20 a.m. Found Ellie at 1:30 a.m. But what I'd never thought to check was the building's insurance files. I accessed the archive records through the property management system, searched for Ellie's name. Found something that made my stomach drop. Ellie Harper had been insured under a rider policy through Jessica Harper Realty Associates, listed as a temporary apprentice for summer internship programs. The policy was worth $800,000, 0 cents. I'd never heard of Jessica Harper Realty Associates. Jessica worked for Westfield Properties. Always had. But the signatures looked official. Company letterhead. Professional formatting. The beneficiary was listed as Jessica Harper, as supervising agent and legal guardian. Everything looked legitimate except for one detail. I'd helped Ellie with her graphic design homework that summer. She'd shown me how to spot forged documents, how digital signatures could be copied and manipulated. The company letterhead was fake. The business registration number didn't exist. Jessica had created a fake company to insure her own daughter, then collected when Ellie died. I felt like I was going to throw up, but there was more. I searched deeper into the insurance database, cross-referenced Jessica's name with other policies. Found another case, Michael Thompson, Jessica's boyfriend before me. Died 6 years ago in a car accident, single vehicle crash on a rainy night. Same insurance company, same type of policy boost right before his death. Same beneficiary, Jessica Harper. Michael Thompson, $1,200,000, 0 cents payout. Ellie Harper, $800,000, 0 cents payout. David Harper, planned for $2 million, 0 cents. Jessica wasn't just planning to kill me. She was a serial killer. I sat in that basement until sunrise, pieces clicking into place. Jessica's grief after Ellie's death. I'd held her while she cried, comforted her through months of depression. All of it fake. She'd murdered her own daughter for money, and I'd been too blind to see it. But why had Ellie been in the stairwell that night? She should have been in bed. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through old photos. Found the ones from that summer. Ellie helping me install new light fixtures. Ellie learning how to read electrical panels. Ellie asking questions about building maintenance. She'd been interested in everything I did, always wanting to help. Smart kid, quick learner. Maybe too smart for her own good. I went back to my apartment to shower and change clothes. Jessica was still sleeping. In the kitchen, I made coffee and tried to think straight. What had Ellie seen that night? Why was she in the stairwell? I searched through old boxes in the hall closet, found Ellie's things that Jessica had packed away after the funeral. Clothes, books, school supplies. At the bottom of the box, wrapped in an old sweater, I found Ellie's laptop. I'd forgotten about it. Jessica said she donated it to charity. The laptop was password protected, but Ellie had shown me her passwords that summer. She used the same one for everything. Graphic Design 2020. The desktop loaded, folders full of design projects and class assignments. And something else. A USB drive icon on the desktop labeled, "For David, emergency only." Yes, I clicked it. A video file opened. Ellie's face filled the screen. "David, if you're watching this, something happened to me, and it's probably not an accident." My hands trembled as I adjusted the volume. I've been noticing things. Mom's been acting weird, taking calls late at night, hiding papers, and there's this guy she's been meeting. The video was time-stamped 3 days before Ellie died. I found some insurance documents in her purse, policies with my name on them, big money, and there was stuff about Michael, too. She paused, looked directly at the camera. "I think Mom killed Michael. And I think she's planning something else." The video continued. "I'm going to try to get more evidence. There's some electrical work you showed me in the basement, the sparking wire near the main panel. I'm going to go fix it tonight while she's out." My blood ran cold. "But if something happens to me, you need to know. The wire wasn't broken by accident. Someone loosened the connections on purpose, made it dangerous." Ellie had figured it out. The sparking wire I'd shown her wasn't a maintenance issue, it was a trap. Jessica had sabotaged the electrical panel, waited for the right moment, and Ellie had walked right into it, trying to fix what she thought was a safety hazard. The video ended with Ellie saying, "I hope I'm wrong about Mom, but if I'm not, please don't let her get away with it." I sat staring at the blank screen. Ellie hadn't fallen down the stairs. She'd been electrocuted, then pushed by her own mother. For money. I copied the video file to my phone, deleted it from the laptop, put everything back exactly as I'd found it. Jessica was in the shower when I returned the laptop to the closet. She came out, toweling her hair, smiled at me. "Good morning, honey. You're up early?" "Couldn't sleep," I said. She kissed my cheek. Same vanilla perfume. "You've been working too hard. Maybe you should take a vacation." Permanent vacation, that's what she was planning. "Maybe I will," I said. She made breakfast. We ate together like a normal couple, talked about the weather, weekend plans. She was good at this, the caring wife act. How many times had she practiced it? With Michael? With Ellie? How many times had she comforted the people she was planning to kill? After Jessica left for work, I went back to the basement, pulled up the building's electrical schematics from 4 years ago. There it was, panel 7B, East Wing basement. The same panel I'd been called to service the night Ellie died. The same panel with the sparking wire that had somehow fixed itself by the time I got there, because Jessica had already used it and covered her tracks. But this time would be different. This time, I knew what she was planning. This time, I was ready. Jessica thought she was smart, careful, professional. She had no idea what she was dealing with. Because, 20 years ago, before I became a maintenance worker, I'd been very good at hunting people who thought they were untouchable. People like Jessica. The hunt was about to get personal. The evidence was damning, but evidence without delivery is just files on a hard drive. I spent 3 days organizing everything: financial records, insurance documents, camera footage, Ellie's video testimony. But I couldn't just walk into a police station. Jessica was smart, connected. She'd find a way to discredit me. I needed multiple agencies investigating simultaneously. Too many fronts for her to control. The public library downtown had computers with VPN access. I drove there Tuesday morning, told Jessica I was getting materials for a building inspection. Not entirely a lie. Created an encrypted email account through a secure service. No personal information, no traceable connections. Then I started sending packages. First stop, State Insurance Fraud Division. I uploaded the forged documents from Ellie's policy, the fake company registration, the pattern of deaths and payouts connected to Jessica Harper. Simple subject line: serial insurance fraud, multiple deaths, active investigation needed. I included timestamps, cross-references, financial transaction records. Professional, thorough, impossible to ignore. Second package, Derek's Insurance Licensing Board. I didn't know Derek's last name yet, but I had his voice on audio, his image on camera footage, his involvement in planning my death. The board would have records, disciplinary processes, ways to track down agents involved in fraudulent activities. Unlicensed agent facilitating insurance murder scheme. I attached the audio recordings from apartment 414, the camera footage showing his meetings with Jessica. Third package, police tip line. This one was trickier. I needed to give them enough to start investigating without revealing how I'd obtained the evidence. Anonymous tip: building maintenance worker David Harper being targeted for murder by wife Jessica Harper and unknown associate. Previous victims include Michael Thompson, 6 years ago, and Ellie Harper, 4 years ago. Pattern of insurance fraud preceding staged accidents. I included Ellie's video testimony, the electrical panel schematics, the insurance payout records. Everything. Let them connect the dots. Each email was sent through different VPN servers, different routing paths, no digital fingerprints leading back to me. 20 years ago, I'd learned how to move information without leaving tracks. Some skills never fade. But sending evidence was only half the battle. I needed fresh evidence, current activity, something that would catch Jessica and Derek in the act. The building's fire inspection was scheduled for next month. I moved it up 2 weeks without telling anyone. Fire inspections meant testing alarm systems, sprinkler controls, emergency lighting. They'd need to disable systems to avoid false alarms during their accident, but they wouldn't know the inspection had been rescheduled. I positioned myself in the basement Tuesday night, monitoring the camera feeds on my phone. Jessica came home at her usual time, made dinner, watched television. Normal routine. But at 11:30 p.m., she got a text message. Her entire demeanor changed. She grabbed her purse, left the apartment. 15 minutes later, she was in the building lobby with Derek. I finally got a clear look at him. Mid-40s, average build, expensive suit. The kind of guy who sold people things they didn't need. They took the elevator to the 4th floor. My cameras caught everything in high definition. Derek pulled tools from a briefcase, professional equipment, wire strippers, voltage testers, circuit breakers. He knew what he was doing. They entered the electrical room next to apartment 414. Derek went straight to the fire alarm panel, started disconnecting wires. Jessica stood watch, checking her phone, looking nervous. "How long does this take?" she asked. 10 minutes, Derek said. "Maybe 15. Depends on how thorough you want it." "Thorough? We only get one shot at this." Derek worked methodically, disabling smoke detectors, bypassing sprinkler controls, creating dead zones where alarms wouldn't trigger. Perfect setup for an electrical accident that wouldn't be detected until too late. I recorded everything, multiple angles, crystal clear audio. But Derek was being careful. No fingerprints, no DNA. Nothing that would connect him to the sabotage afterward. Except for one thing. The fire inspection I'd rescheduled was happening in 3 days. When the inspector tested the systems Derek had just disabled, every alarm would fail. Massive safety violations, immediate investigation, criminal charges for whoever was responsible. And Derek's fingerprints were all over the equipment he'd used. They finished after midnight, left separately. Jessica came home 20 minutes later. Acted like nothing had happened. "How was your evening?" she asked. "Quiet," I said. "Just reading." She kissed my forehead. "Don't stay up too late." Same caring wife act. Same vanilla perfume. Same woman who'd just helped sabotage fire safety systems to cover up my murder. The next morning I submitted the new footage to all 3 agencies, updated the police tip with specific details about the alarm sabotage, added a new timeline. Subjects have disabled fire safety systems at Northgate Towers. Immediate investigation recommended before planned accident occurs. Then I waited, but Jessica was getting suspicious. She'd started watching me more carefully, asking questions about my schedule, my whereabouts. "You've been working a lot of overtime lately," she said over breakfast. "Building inspections," I said. "You know how it is. Maybe you should slow down. All this stress isn't good for you." She was right about the stress, but wrong about the cause. The stress wasn't from work. It was from living with someone who wanted me dead. "I'll take some time off soon," I said. "Good. I worry about you." Sure she did. Worried I might die before she could collect the insurance money. Thursday afternoon, Rick found me in the basement again. "Dave, we need to talk." He looked shaken, nervous. "Some guy came by last night, asking questions." My stomach dropped. "What kind of questions?" "About you, your work schedule, whether you'd been accessing old files." Derek had to be. "Did you tell him anything?" "Hell no. Guy gave me the creeps, but he seemed to know things. About the building, about what happened to that girl." Rick sat down heavily. "Dave, I don't know what you're mixed up in, but this feels dangerous." He was right. It was dangerous. For Jessica and Derek. "Just forget about it," I said. "I'll handle it." But Rick's warning changed everything. They knew I was investigating. The careful game was over. Time to accelerate the timeline. I called the State Fraud Division from the library that afternoon. "This is regarding the anonymous tip about Jessica Harper," I said. "The subjects are planning immediate action. If you're going to investigate, it needs to happen now." The agent on the phone was professional but cautious. "Sir, we're reviewing the materials you submitted, but investigations take time. These people have killed before. They're planning another murder this week. We understand your concern, but we need to verify the evidence through proper channels. Proper channels would take weeks, maybe months." I didn't have weeks. I uploaded everything to a secure file sharing service, sent the links to local news stations, crime reporters, anyone who might act faster than bureaucrats. Subject line: building maintenance worker targeted for murder, insurance fraud ring, exclusive investigation opportunity. Sometimes you have to force the system to move. That evening, Jessica was on edge, pacing the apartment, making phone calls in the bedroom. She came out looking stressed. "I need to run some errands tomorrow," she said. "Business stuff." "Sure," I said. "I'll probably work late anyway." She nodded, but her eyes were calculating, planning something. I checked the camera feeds on my phone. Derek was in the building again, 4th floor, checking his handiwork on the alarm systems, making sure everything was ready. My phone buzzed. Text message from an unknown number. Stop digging or join the others. Derek's number. Had to be. I deleted the message. Didn't respond. But the threat was clear. They knew I was on to them, which meant they'd accelerate their timeline too. The game was about to end, one way or another. I pulled up the fire inspection schedule on my computer, moved it up again, tomorrow morning instead of next week. Emergency safety inspection, immediate compliance required. By noon tomorrow, the alarm sabotage would be discovered. By evening, investigators would be crawling all over the building. By next week, Jessica and Derek would be in custody. If I lived that long. I locked my office door, checked the camera feeds one more time. Empty hallways, quiet building. But somewhere in this maze of apartments and corridors, 2 killers were planning my death. What they didn't know was that 20 years ago, I'd been very good at staying alive when people wanted me dead. And I'd been even better at making sure they didn't get the chance to try again. Time to remember those skills. The hunt was almost over. The fire inspector arrived at 8 a.m. sharp. Mark Stevens, 30-year veteran. He'd seen every trick in the book, but when he tested the alarm systems, his face went white. "Dave, you need to see this." I followed him to the electrical room. He pointed at the control panel Derek had sabotaged. "Someone's been messing with these circuits. This isn't wear and tear, this is deliberate." He ran diagnostics on every system, smoke detectors, sprinkler controls, emergency lighting. All disabled, all traceable to professional tampering. "I'm calling this in," Stevens said. "This is criminal sabotage." By noon, investigators were crawling through the building. Fire marshal, police technicians, insurance fraud specialists. They found everything. Derek's fingerprints on the control panels, tool marks matching professional equipment, timing that connected to the policy changes on my life insurance. The digital evidence I'd submitted suddenly had physical corroboration. Game over. At 3:15 p.m., Detective Sarah Collins knocked on my apartment door. "Mr. Harper, we'd like to ask you some questions." Jessica was at work, or supposed to be. "About what?" "Safety violations in your building, and some concerning information we've received about insurance fraud." I let her in, offered coffee, played the role of confused building maintenance worker. "Someone's been tampering with fire safety systems," Collins said. "Any idea who might have access?" "Just me and the other maintenance staff," I said, "but we didn't do this." She showed me photos of the sabotaged panels. "Recognize this work?" "Professional job," I said. "Whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing." Collins nodded. "We've received anonymous tips suggesting this might be connected to insurance fraud, multiple deaths, pattern of behavior." I kept my expression neutral. "That sounds serious." "It is. We're looking at your wife, Jessica, and an associate named Derek Phillips." Derek Phillips finally had a last name. "I don't know any Derek Phillips," I said, which was technically true. I'd never been introduced. Collins studied my face. "Mr. Harper, if you know anything about threats to your safety, now's the time to speak up." "Threats? We have reason to believe someone might be planning to harm you." I paused, let confusion play across my features. "You think my wife wants to hurt me?" "We're investigating that possibility." An hour later, they arrested Jessica at her office. I watched from the basement security monitor as they brought her through the lobby in handcuffs. No drama, no scene, just quiet, professional law enforcement. Derek Phillips was arrested the same afternoon. Insurance fraud specialist with a suspended license and a history of questionable claims. I stayed late that night, monitoring news coverage on my phone. Local woman arrested in insurance murder plot. Building maintenance worker targeted in fraud scheme. Anonymous whistleblower exposes serial killer. The story was everywhere. Jessica's mugshot looked smaller than I remembered. Older, like the mask had finally slipped. She pleaded innocent at the arraignment, blamed everything on Derek. I was manipulated, she told reporters. Derek Phillips convinced me to take out policies, but I never agreed to hurt anyone. Classic Jessica, always the victim. But Derek had a different story. His lawyer cut a deal within a week, cooperation in exchange for reduced charges. Derek told investigators everything. How Jessica had approached him 2 years ago, how she'd done this before with Michael Thompson and her own daughter, how she'd planned my death down to the minute, how she'd collected insurance money from 3 separate murders. The trial started 8 weeks later. I sat in the back of the courtroom watching my wife face justice for killing Ellie. Prosecutor Janet Walsh was thorough, methodical. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this case is about greed, about a woman who murdered her own daughter for money, who killed her boyfriend for money, who planned to murder her husband for money. She presented the evidence piece by piece. Forged insurance documents, financial records, timeline of deaths and payouts, and the anonymous whistleblower evidence that had started it all. Someone with access to building records and intimate knowledge of the defendant's activities provided law enforcement with crucial information, Walsh said. This person risked their own safety to expose a serial killer. She didn't know the whistleblower was sitting 20 feet away. Derek testified on day 3. Calm, matter of fact. Jessica Harper contacted me in March of 2023. She said she needed insurance advice for her family, but what she really wanted was someone to help stage her husband's death. He walked the jury through every detail. The apartment meetings, the electrical sabotage, the plan to make my death look like a workplace accident. She showed me photos of her previous work, Derek said. Michael Thompson's car crash, her daughter's fall down the stairs. She was proud of how clever she'd been. Jessica's lawyer tried to paint Derek as the mastermind, but the financial records told a different story. Every policy had been initiated by Jessica. Every payment had gone to accounts she controlled. Derek was just the hired help. On day 5, they called me to testify. Mr. Harper, were you aware your wife had taken out additional life insurance policies on you? No, I said. I knew about our original policy, but not the others. Were you aware of any threats to your safety? I thought about how to answer, careful not to reveal too much. I'd noticed Jessica acting differently, secretive, but I didn't know why. Did you ever observe your wife with Derek Phillips? I saw them together once, in the building, but I didn't know who he was. True statements, incomplete but not false. Walsh walked me through my discovery of the fire safety sabotage, my cooperation with investigators. Mr. Harper, do you believe your wife intended to kill you? I looked across the courtroom. Jessica stared back, face blank. The woman who'd held me while I grieved for Ellie, who'd kissed me goodbye every morning while planning my murder. Yes, I said, I believe she did. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Guilty on all counts. Murder in the first degree for Ellie Harper. Murder in the first degree for Michael Thompson. Attempted murder for the plot against me. Insurance fraud, conspiracy, evidence tampering. Life in prison without parole. Derek got 25 years for his cooperation. I watched him lead Jessica away in shackles. She looked back once, caught my eye. No expression, no emotion. Like she was already planning her next move. But there wouldn't be a next move. The system had worked exactly as I'd hoped. Anonymous evidence, professional investigation, legitimate prosecution. Justice through proper channels. No vigilante revenge, no personal vendettas. Just careful, methodical exposure of the truth. That night, I sat in my empty apartment, thinking about Ellie. The video she'd left, the courage it took to investigate her own mother. She'd died trying to protect me. Now Jessica would never hurt anyone again. The building was quiet. Safe. My job was done, but not quite finished. There was still one more thing I needed to do. 6 months later, I stood in the building's basement with a metal trash can and a box of matches. Ellie's last drawing lay in my hands, a sketch she'd made that final summer, the two of us working on electrical panels, tools scattered around our feet. She'd written my stepdad David in careful block letters at the bottom. The USB drive sat next to it, her final testimony. The evidence that had helped convict her mother. Time to let them both go. I dropped the drawing into the trash can first, watched the edges curl and blacken. The USB drive melted quickly, plastic and circuits turning to ash. Some evidence serves its purpose and then becomes a burden. Ellie had gotten her justice. Jessica would spend the rest of her life in prison. But holding on to reminders wouldn't bring Ellie back. Sometimes grief needs closure more than memory needs preservation. The smoke rose toward the ventilation system, disappeared into the building's circulation, like Ellie had. But this time, I wasn't finding her body at the bottom of the stairs. This time, I was saying goodbye. I climbed to the 4th floor afterward, stopped outside apartment 414. The door had been sealed since the investigation. Crime scene tape removed weeks ago, but nobody wanted to rent a space where murder had been planned. I pulled out my maintenance keys, unlocked the door. Empty rooms, clean walls, sunlight through windows that had witnessed conspiracy. But it wasn't the apartment that bothered me anymore. It was the number on the door. The place where Jessica and Derek had laughed about my death, where they'd planned Ellie's murder years before. Some numbers carried too much weight. I used a screwdriver to remove the brass plaque. 4 screws, 30 seconds of work. The door looked naked without it, just blank wood and a peephole. No identity, no history. Perfect. I walked to the maintenance office and dropped the plaque in the parts bin with other discarded hardware. Building 414 no longer existed. Just empty space, waiting for someone new. That evening, I sat in my apartment with a beer and the local newspaper. Jessica's appeal had been denied. Final ruling, no more legal maneuvers. Derek Phillips was adjusting to prison life. Rumor had it he wasn't popular with other inmates. Child killers rarely were. The building had new tenants, young couple in 3B, retired teacher in 7A, normal people living normal lives. They didn't know about the murders, the insurance fraud, the careful investigation that had unfolded in these hallways. Be better that way. I'd gotten my life back, quiet, predictable, safe, but different than before. I understood now that some people wore masks so well you never saw underneath until it was almost too late. Jessica had fooled me for 8 years, might have fooled me forever if I hadn't heard her laughing about my death. Some lessons cost more than others. My phone buzzed, a text message from Rick Miller. Heard they're making you head of security too. Congratulations. Building management had offered me the promotion last week. More responsibility, better pay. More importantly, better oversight of who came and went. I'd accepted. The building needed someone who understood that safety wasn't just about working elevators and functioning boilers. Sometimes it was about watching for predators who wore familiar faces. I finished my beer and walked to the window, looked down at the street where Jessica used to park her car. Empty space now, like everything else she'd left behind. No forwarding address, no personal belongings, no trace that she'd ever lived here. Her real estate license had been revoked, her bank accounts frozen and distributed to victims' families. Michael Thompson's parents had gotten some closure, long overdue. Ellie's college fund had been established in her name. Other young designers would benefit from scholarship. Something positive growing from something terrible. That's how justice worked sometimes. Not perfect, but forward-moving. I turned away from the window, made coffee, settled into my chair with a maintenance manual. Tomorrow would bring new problems. Broken pipes, faulty wiring, Normal building issues that had normal solutions. They were the kind of problems I was good at solving. The kind that didn't involve insurance policies and staged accidents. 20 years ago, I'd left a different life behind because I wanted something peaceful, ordinary. I'd found it here, lost it for a while, found it again. But this time, I'd keep my eyes open. Some people were broken in ways that couldn't be fixed. Jessica, Derek, the kind of predators who saw other people as opportunities. I couldn't repair them, couldn't trust them, couldn't ignore them. I could only watch for the signs and act when necessary. I'd learned to do that without becoming what I'd once been, without crossing lines I didn't want to cross again. Justice through proper channels, evidence through legitimate means. The system working exactly as it should. Clean, professional, final. I closed the maintenance manual and turned off the lights. Outside, Northgate Towers settled into its evening routine. Quiet hallways, locked doors, sleeping families, safe. Some things aren't meant to be fixed. Some are meant to be buried. And some are meant to be protected. I'd figured out the difference. Finally.